Rimbaud eyes. "You what?" said Graham, with a degree of incredulity. "A true reflection of what's in a person's heart?" His disdain was transparent from the tone of his voice. "Yes," explained the earnest acolyte. "The first tenet of loyalty is to know your heart and what commands its devotion above all else." Graham's eyes narrowed in suspicion, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So, you should just be loyal to the thing you really care about?" "Well, no. You only have to be loyal to one thing. But the virtue is about... it's about knowing what's the most important thing for you, what is in your heart." The normally laconic questioner leaned back, looking surprised before he instinctively blurted out, "That is the stupidest idea I've ever heard." Now it was the priest's turn to look shocked. But Graham continued speaking before he could say anything. "I've had people working for me that I couldn't stand the sight of. I remember there was this one fellow one time, Sean her name was, right two-faced tattletale. Nasty little piece of work. I would have loved to see her feeding the sharks. Can't think of anyone who'd deserve it more. But it didn't push her overboard myself because she was useful. Fidelity's got nothing to do with what's in your heart. You can't go through life making decisions based on how you bloody feel about people. We can all treat people well if we like them. Fidelity is about treating people well even when you can't stand the bloody sight of them. You do it because they're useful to you. If you don't treat people well, they'll bloody well stop being useful. The whole point of fidelity is to keep faith with people you don't like." The orc paused, having finally run out of things to rant about. Right," said the acolyte. "So, what would you like me to say to people?" He spoke cautiously in case it set the voluble questioner off again. Graham screwed his face up as he considered the question for a moment. "Tell them it's fine," he finally responded. "Tell everyone we'll call it loyalty. We'll work something out. At the end of the day, every Apulian," he paused, having had to stop himself from saying Grendel before he continued, "every Apulian knows that what matters is getting across the abyss. To do that, you have to put yourself first. That's what's in my heart. So loyalty for us is about putting yourself first. So that'll be fine. Right. What's next?" "Well," the young civil servant responded, "the Prosperity Assembly," he paused for a moment and looked down to read off his notes, "recognises fidelity is a route to prosperity. We invite the Apulian orcs to visit our congregations of prosperity in the Empire so they may further understand prosperity." "But I thought you said the Loyalty Assembly said they were having fidelity," demanded Graham. "That's not actually what they said," corrected the hapless civil servant as he frantically scanned his notes for the correct wording of the judgment. Overview. The former Grendel orcs who followed Caliact have now joined the League. The majority of them have taken the name Apulians to reflect their new identity. Not every orc in Spiral has joined the League. In fact, the status of the majority of orcs in Apollos remains, well, unclear would be the most charitable way to describe it. Most of them seem to be hedging their bets. Everyone knows that war with the Grendel is coming. Spiral is a League territory now, but it was a Grendel territory barely 3 months ago. Those orcs who are personally loyal to Caliact have eagerly embraced the League. Those who personally opposed her have remained loyal to the Council of Salt Lords. The rest seem to be waiting to see how the cards fall before they decide which way to jump. The fate of Caliact herself remains in jeopardy. She is apparently suffering under the effects of a powerful curse cast on her by the Urizen. According to what is known, it is a ruinous autumn curse that is causing Caliact to struggle to hold on to any of her vast wealth or fortune. Her fellow Apulians are putting on a brave face, but it seems there is little they can do to stop the curse running its course. Caliact is frantically searching for any means to break the curse. If she cannot, then it is likely to leave her ruined by the time it has run its course. As they were preparing to join the Empire, the Apulians asked the Imperial Synod to make a ruling on the nature and importance of the differences between their religious beliefs and those of their fellow League citizens. The Virtue Assemblies have yet to deliver a definitive ruling, but whilst the Synod ponders the significance of the Apulians' peculiar beliefs, the wheels of politics turn. The first order of business is the matter of who will be the Senator of Spiral. Gold Rush. A huge number of citizens from across the League have moved to Spiral. The formal adoption of Spiral into the League has heralded a great exodus of League citizens from all over the Empire, flooding into Apollos, searching for opportunity. Some come in search of wealth, others are seeking fame, but presumably more than a few of them are looking for power. There is a Senate seat up for election at this summit, and with no established power hierarchy, it looks like more than a few people have their eye on the ultimate prize. One of those groups is definitely Caliact and her other Apulians. The former Salt Lord told the League senators that she had no wish to become a senator, but it seems that statement was only true in a technical sense. The Apulian Orcs fully intend to contest the seat, with Odrin van Apulian, a close ally of the former Salt Lord, putting herself forward. This is fortunate indeed. Their leader suffering under the debilitating curse inflicted by the Urizen, it is clear she is struggling to maintain order over her affairs in Apollos. Were it a question of every Orc with a business in Spiral voting for Odrin, that would likely be the end of the matter. Even with the recent influx of League citizens from across the Empire, the Orcs still outnumber the humans in Apollos. But with the overwhelming majority of Orcs deciding to remain on the sidelines for now, it seems like Odrin will have a serious fight on her hands. However, the situation does not entirely favour the newcomers either. Imperial election law states that if eligibility to vote for an election is restricted in some way, then you cannot vote if you were eligible to vote in an equivalent but different election in the past 12 months. In lay terms, that means no League citizen who was eligible to vote for a senator in winter, spring or summer can vote for a senator of Spiral. The law exists to prevent citizens moving from one territory to the next voting in each election. If they remain in Spiral for the immediate future, then they will definitely be eligible to vote in a year's time, but nearly half of those who move there this season cannot vote on this occasion. Of course, this restriction doesn't apply to anyone moving to Spiral from Tazato, nor does it apply to anyone who didn't own a business in the previous year, so the majority of League citizens in Spiral are eligible to vote, but it is far from all. And it means the election could be especially contentious, even discounting the fact that somebody who was a Grendel until 3 months ago is trying to claim the seat. To try and help make things easier, the Civil Service have published a list of every citizen to whom they have distributed voting bonds thus far. They will update this list again before the summit begins, in an attempt to keep it as informative as possible. If anyone believes they are due a voting bond and they are not on that list, they should contact the Civil Service urgently. Out of character note, the list that is available on the Rimbaud Eyes Wind of Fortune page should be correct based on who has booked for the coming event as of 6 o'clock PM on Wednesday. If you had booked before then and expected to be voting in this election, you should email plot@profouндecisions.co.uk and we will check your status. Further out of character note. NPC votes. NPC candidate. What's going on, PD? We appreciate that some players were surprised to discover that Profound Decisions have a team of Apulian NPCs in the field who are clearly fighting hard to try and keep as much political control of Spiral as possible, including things like trying to keep access to the Boar seat and trying to win senatorial elections. The surprise is understandable. We've never done anything like this before, and we don't have any current plans to do it in any other nation. This is a unique situation where a group of deeply ambitious Orcs have sought out a chance to become Imperial citizens, so we've decided to handle it a bit differently. The reality is that no one was more surprised than we were by the player decision to embrace Spiral into the heart of the League. We are often caught out by player decisions. It's one of the things that makes running Empire so enjoyable. We hadn't looked in detail at what the Apulians would do, and how we would make them continue to feel real and relevant once Spiral became a League territory. As soon as we considered it, we realised the best possible way we could do that was to have them on the field, competing for political control of Spiral's assets, exactly like all the other player characters. So we recruited a team of people to play NPCs for us, and gave the players a chance to meet them at the last event. This event, they will be contesting the senatorial seat alongside the players. Even a glance at the list of eligible voters will reveal that our NPCs do not exactly dominate the list, which is fantastic news. It means that whoever wins the coming election, whether it's a player character or an NPC, they will only be able to do so by building the biggest possible voting block of supporters, which is exactly how it should work. Our NPC team includes a mix of participants with more or less experience of playing Empire, just like all the other groups of player characters in the territory. We've deliberately arranged the way the setting has evolved to justify the fact that the only votes our NPCs have are the ones for the Apulian characters are Fizrept on the field, exactly like every other group of PCs. It's important to stress that PD simply do not mind who wins. We're contesting the election to make the ambition and audacity of the former Grendel feel completely real. The fight is important to us, the outcome isn't. In this sense, the political battle for the control of Spiral is exactly like the big battles on Saturdays and Sundays of each event. Put up Orc opponents for the player characters to fight against, and we don't mind who wins or loses. Our goal is to make the battle feel as real as possible. If our non-player character wins the seat, then that will create a lot of new opportunities to do plot with Spiral, and if they lose the vote, that will create a lot of different opportunities to do plot in Spiral. Obviously, it makes no in-character sense to oppose Oddrin on the basis that she is an NPC, but there are lots of really good reasons to convince your fellow Spiral business owners not to vote for her. She was a Grendel until 3 months ago. She's inexperienced, doesn't know the League, the Senate, or the Empire as a whole that well. She's a pawn of Caliact, the virtue of the former Grendel is pretty questionable. We've tried to ensure that there is a plethora of really good in-character reasons that people can campaign against Oddrin, so that nobody has to say, don't vote for them, they're an NPC. We won't have a large group of Apulian NPCs on the field forever, but we'll be updating the League brief over winter to give players all the information they need to create their own League org characters. At some point in the future, there won't be any need to have Apulian NPCs on the field, because they won't be able to achieve anything that the Apulian player characters aren't already doing, and better. The cost of virtue. The Imperial Synod has provided some answers on the Apulian qualities of audacity, cunning, fidelity, and retribution. The Apulians asked the Imperial Synod to provide a ruling on the elements of their faith that appear at odds with the Way, most notably their virtues of audacity, cunning, fidelity, and retribution. They were keen to avoid any possibility of being accused of blasphemy, apparently eager to stay on the right side of the Synod and Imperial law. At the summit, the matters were considered and discussed at length, and some answers were issued. The Pride Assembly recognises audacity as a noble quality that combines elements of both pride and ambition. After discussion with the Apulian Orcs, we believe audacity can be a lens through which they can start to engage with the virtue of pride. Luciana Valsi de Savos, Pride Assembly 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld 304 votes to none. The Ambition Assembly recognises audacity as a noble quality that combines elements of both ambition and pride. After discussion with the Apulian Orcs, we believe audacity can be a lens through which they can continue to engage with the virtue of ambition. Leah Adlar von Holberg, Ambition Assembly 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld 224 votes to 38 votes. The Apulian Orc's virtue of audacity says power is a crown, learn to put it on. It teaches about self-belief, about knowing that you have the guts to follow through on your plans and make them manifest as virtuous action. This self-belief is the core to the imperial virtue of pride. Pride teaches us to despise the half-hearted, the uncommitted, and the pretender. What is audacity if not committing yourself fully to your goals and knowing you have what it takes to achieve them? Therefore, we recognise audacity is pride by another name, and we welcome the Apulian Orcs to the Empire and the way of virtue. Genevieve Barossa de Apulian, Pride Assembly 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld 224 votes to 38 votes. Audacity. Power is a crown, learn to put it on. Both the Pride and Ambition Assemblies claimed that audacity was part of the virtue. Both the Pride and Ambition Assemblies have recognised audacity as a lens through which they can continue to engage with the virtue, respectively. This creates a degree of confusion with the Apulians as they try to obtain a definitive answer on what they are supposed to call audacity now. None of these statements achieved a greater majority, nor were either submitted to the vote of the General Assembly, so in the view of the eminent scholars of the Synod, neither judgment can be argued to be definitive. Nobody, not even their best friends, would confuse the Apulians with eminent scholars of the Synod. They asked questions like, does it matter if the Pride Assembly got 304 votes and the Ambition Assembly only got 224 votes? The civil servants explain patiently that the Synod votes don't really work like that. You can't rank the significance of votes in one assembly against another because each assembly is a different size. But that only leads to more questions of, who's in charge then? And is it better if your assembly has more votes or less votes? The Grendel don't seem concerned with the subtle spiritual distinctions being raised by the different assemblies, so much as exactly how the Synod exercises its power. In the end, the majority of Apulians seem to decide that henceforth they are going to refer to audacity as pride. If the Synod can't make up its mind on the subject, then nobody is going to accuse them of blasphemy for what they're doing, which was one of the things they were most worried about anyway. If the Synod does come to a single view on the matter, then they'll respond accordingly, but providing they won't be held accountable for calling it pride in the meantime, then there's nothing more to worry about. When asked why they embraced pride rather than ambition, about a third of them point out that they have regarded ambition and audacity as distinct for hundreds of years. They really do think they're different virtues. Around a quarter point out that pride got 304 votes in favour, and ambition only got 224 votes in favour, so pride must be better than ambition. And the rest point out that Genevieve Barossa has changed her last name to Apulian. She's one of them now, so what she says carries more weight than the rest of them. Thus, the fact that Genoveva Barossa has adopted the sobriquet the Apulian seems to tip the balance for the Apulians, at least for now. Doubtless the Imperial Synod will continue to discuss audacity for some time to come. In the meantime, the Apulian idea of audacity will spread through the nation as an expression of League pride, at least until the situation changes. The Loyalty Assembly finds that fidelity has commonalities with loyalty. There is no conflict if expression of that loyalty is a true reflection of what is in that person's heart. We welcome the priests of the Apulian Orcs to our assembly to deepen our understanding of the virtue of loyalty. Together we are stronger. Raywin Eternal, Loyalty Assembly, 385YE Summer Solstice. Upheld, 349 votes to 26 votes. The Assembly recognises fidelity is a route to prosperity. We invite the Apulian Orcs to visit our congregations of prosperity in the Empire so that they may further their understanding of prosperity. Alexei, Prosperity Assembly, 385YE Summer Solstice. Upheld, 259 votes to 60 votes. Fidelity. You can't drive an ox with a broken back. Both the Prosperity and the Loyalty Assembly claimed that fidelity was part of the virtue. A similar state of confusion exists with regard to fidelity, with both the Loyalty and the Prosperity Assemblies expressing shared commonalities with the idea of fidelity. Here, though, there is a little more engagement with the actual issues of virtue. Graham expresses some points of philosophical disagreement with some of the central ideas of the virtue of loyalty, but ultimately he seems to believe that the Apulian Orcs will be able to adapt their beliefs and seems perfectly happy to acknowledge that their ideas on fidelity are part of loyalty. The idea that fidelity might be a route to prosperity seems to offer similar potential for disagreement, but their idea of prosperity seems a little different to the way it is understood in the Empire. They definitely consider them to be two very distinct virtues, and they appear to want to continue to do so, if allowed by the Imperial Synod. In the end, they seem to struggle with whether it is better to embrace the idea that fidelity is part of loyalty, a virtue they don't seem to find very appealing, or prosperity, which is the most commonly followed virtue among the Grendel, but which is something that they see as quite distinct from fidelity. They seem to feel that they have to have one answer or the other, and they would like that settled sooner rather than later. In the end, most of them decide they should call it loyalty and be done with it. When pushed on why, the Apulians explain that they know loyalty is considered one of the most important virtues in the League, and more than anything they are desperately wanting to get on and fit in with their new nation. To their way of thinking, the point of virtue is to help you accumulate power, so it makes sense to embrace loyalty, the better to be accepted by their peers. Thus, most plan to call it loyalty, at least until the Synod makes a definitive ruling one way or the other. Ultimately, whatever name the Apulians adopt, the fact that fidelity was given a degree of acceptance by two different virtue assemblies means that it will continue to be an important part of Apulian life, and may spread elsewhere in the League. The Assembly of the Way welcomes the Apulian Orcs to the way of virtue. We recognise the qualities of audacity, cunning and fidelity, not as virtues, but as love and glory are to the Dornish, or heroism to the Winterborn, still valued, and perhaps roots to virtue but not themselves virtuous. Do not recognise retribution as such a quality, for it is vengeance by another name, and suggests the Apulians turn to the custom of their new nation, the dead reckoning of the League. The Fall of Glory, the Way Assembly, 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld are 157 votes to 20 votes. Cunning and retribution. Insight is the greatest weapon. Vengeance for what you have lost, retribution for what you will gain. No assembly adopted cunning, but the Way denounced retribution. No assembly issued a statement on the Apulian quality of cunning. Perhaps the closest were statements from the Assembly of Wisdom and Ambition, both of which called for more time for the Synod to consider these weighty questions. The Apulian Orcs point out that they don't really have time. They've joined the Empire. They would really like to know which of their traditional spiritual beliefs they're going to have to drop. Can they talk about cunning or not? In the end, pragmatism wins the day. Most Apulian Orcs decide that if the Synod hasn't made a clear statement about cunning, then presumably they're not going to run into legal problems for talking about it. After all, if anyone cared that much, they'd have said so. However, they're also shrewd enough to appreciate that nobody embraced cunning either. Both fidelity and audacity seemed to enjoy recognition and wider appreciation by the Synod, but nobody was in a rush to claim cunning. As a result, most of them decide it's something to be talked about in private from now on, rather than openly discussed. Certainly this lack of any kind of formal acknowledgement will ensure that the ideal of cunning as a noble quality does not spread any further than Apollos, and may not persist even there. There is some disappointment, though, not surprise. The Assembly of the Way chose to regard retribution as no different from vengeance. The Grendel only have one commonly accepted aphorism for each virtue. For retribution it reads, "Vengeance for what you have lost, retribution for what you will gain." So they've rather expected this outcome. The Apulians maintain that the two are very different. They point to the foolishness of the Faradin as proof of that. The Faradin, in pursuit of justice, will attempt to get revenge on those who they believe have crossed them, no matter how much it is to their own detriment. The Apulians see that as madness. They think the proper understanding of retribution is about acting on feelings of injustice, only when they will benefit you and yours. It is a virtue designed to help you get ahead, not to bring others down. Still, they are practical enough to see the need to drop all mention of retribution if that is what the Synod requests. Certainly the compromise that they call it dead reckoning, rather than retribution, appeals to them. Indeed, dead reckoning appeals to the Apulians a great deal. They point out that if dead reckoning is about the favours you owe people, as well as the debt they owe you, then in their eyes, that is more about fidelity than retribution. However, if dead reckoning is about punishing those that have crossed you, then that is absolutely what vengeance is about, and the parts of that that would lead you to your own profit are what the Apulians would call retribution. Ultimately, they're happy to embrace dead reckoning, a concept they consider wise and virtuous. Talk of retribution is likely to disappear, even in Apollos, to be replaced by the idea of dead reckoning. In fact, the Apulians are particularly keen to talk about the idea of dead reckoning in respect of Urizen's decision to curse their leader Caliact as a former Salt Lord. Until very recently, she was the wealthiest person anywhere in Spiral. Urizen's vengeance has already left her frantically scrabbling to hold on to her vast wealth. She is struggling to secure her estates and her properties, her assets are under threat, her puissance is slipping. If this curse runs its course, then she is likely to be ruined by the time the magic fades. The woman who staked everything on bringing Apollos into the League stands to lose it all. What then does that imply for what the League owes Urizen? They have demanded a reckoning. What more could they want than to ruin the leader of the Apulians? Does that not wipe the state clean? We call upon the Apulian orcs to visit the Prosperity congregations across the Empire. They should use this opportunity to reflect on their understanding of prosperity and learn from our understanding, which is informed by centuries of evidence and access to Liao, which has always been unavailable to them. Vera, Prosperity Assembly 385YE Summer Solstice. Upheld, greater majority, 335 votes to 0 votes. Bishops of the League. The Apulians are ready and eager to adopt the way. Their former slaves may need further guidance. Priests, get you to Spiral and show the questioners the majority and authority of the bishop. Plant the seeds of a new generations of League bishops in its soil, and growth of the way shall be its fruit. Paulus Adlar von Holberg, Ambition Assembly, 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld, greater majority, 389 votes to 0 votes. The Assembly calls upon all of the dedicated priests who have Liao in their pockets to travel to Spiral and spread auras of vigilance among our new Apulian friends. Let their souls know what true virtuous feels like. Lady Lordline Delac, Vigilance Assembly 385YE Summer Solstice, upheld 176 votes to 0. Centuries of evidence. 3 virtue assemblies called for greater engagement with the Apulians. The Apulians have taken note of the fact that of everyone who moved to Apollos this season, not a single one opted to open a congregation. The greater majority of the Prosperity Assembly backed the call by Vera to encourage the Apulians to visit Prosperity congregations across the Empire so that they could have an opportunity to reflect on their understanding of prosperity and learn. Unfortunately, the Apulians are not a people given much to reflection. It is true that they don't have access to Liao and the auras it can be used to create, but they have seen and experienced them. They are careful about how they express it, but it is clear they don't seem overly concerned with this evidence. They reiterate that for them the virtues are about morality. They are about how you live your life, the choices you take, the actions you undertake, how you treat other people. They don't really see the point of auras, or really distinguish between the auras that are created with Lao and those that are created with mana. As such, they politely decline the opportunity to go on a pilgrimage across the Empire to learn about prosperity. But they do stress that if somebody could just write down this great insight and understanding that the Empire has gained from its centuries of evidence, they'd be more than happy to read it. There are 2 calls from the Ambition Assembly and the Vigilance Assembly to send priests to Apollos to minister to the spiritual needs of the newest members of the League. Unfortunately, those calls also seem to fall on deaf ears. There are a vast number of citizens heading to Apollos, but literally not a single one of them seems interested in ministering to the spiritual needs of the Apulians. Virtually everyone heading to the newest League city is setting up a business. There are tiny handfuls of exceptions across the League. Citizens who attend Anvil, one is opening a mine, another a manor site, and 2 citizens hiring sailors for their ships. But not a single individual who has moved to Spiral has chosen to set up a congregation. The civil service are able to confirm that after a season's assessment, the total amount of Liao to every single League citizen in Spiral is 0. There are plenty of Urizen congregations in Spiral, not a single one owned by the League. The Apulians seem to consider this both telling and reassuring in equal measure. This is why they joined the League, they explain. The purpose of virtue in the eyes of the Apulians is to help you achieve power, to gain puissance, the essential quality that allows you to cross the howling abyss. The Apulians are simply not interested in Liao and ceremonies and auras. They assume that the priests, the bishops and questioners moving to Apollos are setting up businesses because they want to wield power. The Apulians understand and respect that. That is exactly the kind of priest they want to deal with. As a result, they're supremely confident that they will get along very well with their new bishops, with whom they feel they already share a deep understanding of the realities of life. If the Apulian orcs are to gain an opportunity to benefit and learn from access to Liao, then it may take a while.